Welcome back to another edition of Tales from the Table. So, I want to take you guys way back in the archive today, like way, way back. This is one of the first times that I started to understand that I was actually dealing with fascia and I wasn't just dealing with muscle tissue, nerve, and bone. But I wasn't informed of the concept of fascia yet. When I started to understand that what I was really doing was working with fascia, this was around 2017, working on a gentleman that was really, really crooked. I had already read Jean-Claude Guimberteau's book, The Architecture of Human Living Fascia. So that was the first time the concept of fascia was actually introduced to me. All right. Now I'm going to take you back, like I said, around 2015, early 2015. I'm still owning and operating CrossFit Kismet in Boca Raton, and I have a gentleman contact me who is a friend of one of my members, and he was telling me that he had some pretty serious dizziness going on. So I tell him, okay, come on in. We set up an appointment. He doesn't show up. And I totally forgot about it because I was like, okay, just on to the next person. Well, it was maybe a couple days later after that where his wife then contacts me and she said, hey, are you still available to have my husband come in and work on him? I said, yeah, absolutely. And she said, okay, because his condition's really bad. And I said, what do you mean really bad? And she said, well, now he has vertigo. He's laying in bed constantly. He's on a couple of different prescription medications, and it's really tough for me to get him out of bed and even, downstairs, let alone into a car. So I said, okay, do your best to try and get him here. If that doesn't happen, if it's impossible, I will come in and see you wherever your house is. Well, the guy ended up toughing it out and he showed up at my gym and he was okay. He wasn't the best that he's ever been, but that day he was stable, which was really good. So as I get him on the table and I start to work on him, I notice that his chest is just like rock solid. Now the guy wasn't the most muscular guy in the world, but he was in decent enough shape. Okay. And as I start to work in his trap and his neck area, again, traps and neck were, I mean, just like a tourniquet. And I was like, wow, man, like this is some pretty heavy duty stuff. So I end up talking to him while he's on the table about just how everything's going else in his life, like how's work, how's the family. And he starts to tell me some really terrible things that have happened in his family and in his life that were extraordinarily disheartening. And now I started to understand where all the tension was coming from. Okay, so it basically his family had just completely done a 180 and betrayed him and ended up stealing a lot of his wealth, a lot of his money. And it just fried his brain, tore his heart up into basically mincemeat or paper mache, whatever you want to call it. And he was completely blindsided. So, what is family but your heart, but your security, but your comfort? Right. And I didn't really understand these things all at the time. Like I said, I was really still very much in the muscle phase. And I just looked and I said, okay, we have tight muscles in here and I'm really good at loosening up tight muscles. So let me go ahead and loosen up the tight muscles. So after the first session, his vertigo was completely gone and he didn't have to take the prescription medication anymore. He came in after the second session. A lot of his headaches were going away. His eyes were able to focus a lot better. After the third session, he was totally fine. 100% pain and dizziness free, whatever you want to call it. So what I ended up doing was I had to really tear the fascia, which I didn't know at the time. There is muscle tissue straight up and down on the sternum. So me being me at the time, I'm thinking like I'm just working on the muscle tissue. I opened up the pec major, pec minor. Okay, I started working up in the trap area and then the scalene muscles, get him on his stomach. Now I'm working on the levator scapulas. I'm working on the trap again too. And, I would squeeze his traps and he would scream. One of the easiest and best ways to open up the trapezius muscles and get that stress out, laying face down, head straight, and arms at the side, or you can go arms here or arms here. And all you're going to do is just take your thumb and your forefinger, and you're just going to start to pinch that tissue and pull it up off the skeleton. Okay. And I would do that very lightly, and he'd be screaming. By the third session, I could do it very aggressively, and it would be sore, but he wouldn't get as he wouldn't get in as much pain, basically. Okay. So I opened up the rhomboids, the infraspinatus, supraspinatus, all that stuff. It basically, it was like he had a tourniquet on his upper body. All right. From his neck all the way to his diaphragm. And then you can think about, the aberrant breathing patterns that he's probably entering into as a result. All right. So just complete chaos. Well, we had something really strange happen after that I had never encountered before. And it was pretty miraculous. I ended up getting a call 2-3 weeks later from his wife again, and she ended up telling me that her husband was starting to have arrhythmias, like problems with his heart, after being worked on by me. And he went to his doctor, and the doctor had recognized that he no longer needed the blood pressure medication that he was on. So he was like, whatever the blood pressure medication is doing, or whatever you did, you don't need it because it's dropping your blood pressure too low now. So he stopped the blood pressure medication, and everything returned to normal. His blood pressure was like 130/82, something like that, which before was in the 160s, around 90, something like that, 90, 91, I believe it was. Knowing what I know now about fascia, and I want you to really sit and see if it resonates with you. Think about this for a second. And I tell everybody also who has, in my last week's Tales from Table session, we talked about herniated discs, and I talk about what I call global compression. And you think about it where, you have 33 joints from the head all the way down to the sacrum. And if one of these becomes unstable, the body takes the fascia, and the fascia will lock that area down and restrict its movement or provide support. And the more that we load that or sit in a bad position, right, something like that, or we're constantly on our phone like that just hurt my neck, by the way, we just gave myself whiplash. So the more that we get in these and stay in these bad positions, right, what ends up happening, the body just keeps on tightening up that fascia, laying down more, it gets dehydrated, and it turns into a very hard substance that doesn't provide adequate movement. And then what it does provide is, as force is moving through it, okay, those force patterns don't get absorbed. It's kind of like lightning from one area to another, instead of a nice smooth flow of water or transfer of force. You dehydrate something, it's going to be a lot faster. Okay. You want to think about skateboarding on just dry ground. You're going to be in a lot more control. It's going to be a much smoother ride, where when you get onto a wet ground with a skateboard, now that's super slippery, right? The force isn't really transferring directly, it's going to be going all over the place, kind of. So when we have hydrated fascia, force disperses through the body evenly, because everything starts to absorb it. Everything's hydrated. We get this one concentrated area that's dehydrated, and the force is going to fly through that area in an aberrant way, or it's just going to go like lightning, a lot faster than it normally does. The body gets a little bit discombobulated or uncoordinated, and these force capabilities that we produce start to create problems elsewhere in the body. Okay, so we want to go back to thinking about this gentleman having literally a boa constrictor, having a tourniquet, a corset around the upper part of the body. What is that doing? What's it doing? I think you know the answer. It's putting a lot more pressure on the chest, on the sternum. It's putting a lot more pressure on the beating of that heart. So what does that do? It raises the pressure that the heart has to produce in order to pump blood. So as I started to open up these areas for him, he was one of the first people that I unknowingly, through my work, got him off blood pressure medication. That has only happened in the last 10 years. It's only happened 2 other times with 2 other people who came in with like chest pains, or they came in, with a partially torn pec, things like that. There was one lady that I worked on, and she just had immense pain between her shoulder blades, which would produce tension headaches going up the back of the head. And as I worked on that, I had to work on the sternum a little bit of the subclavius as well. Once I got all that stuff open and breathing, she actually ended up getting off of thyroid medication. She was on thyroid medication, and doctor didn't understand she was having, again, heart arrhythmias, rapid heartbeat, stuff like that. She goes to her thyroid doctor, and the lady's just super confused, and she ends up titrating her medication down, and everything stopped. And the lady was like, well, I don't know why or how your thyroid is recovering. Well, this lady told me the first day that she came in and I worked on her, she told me, Chris, I have had trauma, I believe, since before I could speak. And I was like, whoa. So where's the thyroid? Right in the neck, right on the voice box, right? So I was doing a lot of work in the neck. It was a sheet of steel from here down to here, all around. It was a sheet of steel. You might as well just taken like some sheet metal, wrapped it around her neck, okay, and then put some rivets in the back, and just, like, that was how tight the tissue was. She was in her 70s. She was in her 70s, and I ended up getting her off of thyroid medication as a result of the work that I did. That case will be probably extensively discussed in another Tales from the Table, but that's this week's information that I really want you to digest and understand about the human body, because so more often than not, we are so ready and willing to reach for that chemical solution. We're ready to reach for that supplement. We're ready to reach for whatever prescription medication the doctor prescribed for you to help you. I realize that they're trying to help you. That's the only way that they know how to help you. But anything chemical in the human body is going to be the lowest hanging fruit in any situation. I don't care what it is. Cancer, HIV, I don't care what it is. I'm getting a little bit extreme right now, but it is going to be the lowest hanging fruit. Chemical is going to be the lowest hanging fruit. We have electromagnetic, and then we have electrical, and then we have frequency, and then the biofield up there. So I hope you enjoyed this week's installment of Tales from the Table. And like I said, it just stokes or stimulates consciousness in you that rings true, knowing and understanding the true mechanistic workings of the human body. When we work on a problem, symptoms disappear like fairy dust, right? And that's the magic of what I do, or the wizardry. I would like to say magic is fooling people. Wizardry is true alchemy. Take a cane and turn it into a snake, and you can touch and feel that snake and is very much alive. And the wizard just does something and it turns back into a cane, right? So thank you very much for being here. Love, light, and aloha from everyone, everywhere. And if you got any comments, leave them in the comment box down below. If there's anything I can help you with, reach out to me, rebuildingyou@proton.me. And as always, like everybody else says, like and subscribe, and it helps just push this stuff out to more people who need it, like yourself. All right, I'll see you in the next one.